Hello. Today we're going to talk about how to measure, specifically using inches and a ruler. We're going to just measure a few items. We're going to be measuring to two different things. And first I want to discuss some of the different things that you're going to be looking at when talking with inches. We divide inches up. When we have something that's in between, say it's measures like this paper clip, measures almost 2 inches, but it's not quite. I mean, if we were estimating, we would say 2 inches, but we're trying to get as close as we can to the right measurement. And you'll notice some of these little tick marks. And those little tick marks help us know a more exact measurement for our paper clip. So we're going to talk about the tick marks that we're concerned with. We're only going to worry about the following tick marks, these longer ones like that, that, and that. These are called quarter marks. Oops, quarter marks, 1/4, and that's this first one. Here, this first one. Oops. This one's a quarter mark, so this is 0. This would be 1/4. And this next mark right here, that would be 2/4. But as we know from fractions, we actually call that, we simplify it and we call that a 1/2 mark. But you can think of it as a 2/4. And then the next mark is 3/4, and then the next mark is just a full inch. If you'll notice, that's a really long mark. Now all these littler marks, they break it down even further, but we're not going to worry about that. We're only going to worry about these quarter marks. So they're the ones that are just, like I said, slightly shorter than the inch marks, but not these little dinky marks right here. Those are 1/8 and 1/16, and we're not going to worry about 1/8 and 1/16. So when I want to measure something, I need to decide whether we're going to measure it in two ways. We're going to decide which is the closest half and the closest quarter, or 1/4. So we're going to line this up. We make sure this side is lined up with the 0 mark. The end is not actually the 0 mark. The 0 mark is this line right here. We want to make sure that's lined up as well as we can with that mark, and then we come to this other end right here. And just to make that a little easier, I'm going to draw a little line like that on each end so we can kind of see it. And we're going to just kind of run that down, and it kind of goes right here. I'm going to draw on this ruler. I don't really want you to draw on your rulers, but I'm just doing it so you can see better in the video. And we're going to determine which is the closest. First, which is the closest half. So we're going to go here by halves. Every 2/4 is a half. So we'll go from 0. That's 1/2. That's 1 whole, 1 1/2, and 2 wholes. And we just determine, is this line closer to this half, 1 1/2, or is it closer to the 2? And if we're going by halves, measure by half, we would say this is 2 inches long. So that, we'll put that back in there so you can kind of see. But if we're going by fourths, we may choose to do it differently. Measure by fourths. We're actually right in between on this particular paper clip. Right in between, or even slightly one way or the other. If I line that up really good, I think we're just slightly towards this one. Almost right on that line, which is halfway between, but I think we're just barely closer to the 1 3/4 inch mark. Oops, not M, N. Oop, I keep trying to tip over the camera. Okay. So let's try another measurement. Let's measure a smaller paper clip. We're going to line that up with that 0, and since I already have a mark there, I'm going to leave that one. But we're going to put a mark right there. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to measure which is the closest 1/2 inch and then the closest 1/4 inch. So remember, the 1/2 inches go every 2 1/4 inches. So 1/2, 1 whole, and then 1/2. And we're going to decide, is it closer to the 1 whole or is it closer to the 1 1/2? Since it's slightly this way of that 3/4, which is halfway between those two, I'm going to go towards the 1 inch. So we're going to say that's 1 inch is what it's closest to. Measured by 1/4, though, it's almost right on that 1/4. So we're going to go 1 and 1/4 inch. Let's try measuring a few other things. We're always going to measure it by whether it's the closest 1/2 inch or the closest 1/4 inch. Now I've got a nice Uno card, and I'm going to measure this lengthwise. That lengthwise means the longer side. Widthwise would mean the short side. So we're going to measure this the lengthwise. So if I line that card right up on that 0 on this side, see that? And then I go over here and I check which 1/2 inch is this closest to. I've got 1/2, 1 and 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2. It's definitely really close to that 3 1/2 mark. So I'm going to put 3 1/2 inch. Now I got to determine whether it's closest to the 1/4. Well, I know it's definitely over 3, of course. I can go right to that. But is it closer to the 1/4, 1/4, or 1/2, or 2/4 mark? Well, it's definitely really close to that 1/2 mark. And so I'm going to put 3, and should I put 2/4? No, I really should simplify it. It's still 1/2, even though it's in the closest 1/4 inch. A 1/2 is one of the quarters because of the 2/4 is the same. So we're going to still write it as 3/2 inch, even though it's the 3 2/4 is the closest 1/4. So at this point, you should be able to measure any item, whether to the closest 1/2 and to the closest 1/4. You may want to pause the video and do the first 6 problems on in your math book, and then the following problems after that, when you come back, I'll show you how to do those as well. Okay, so hopefully you've done those first 6 problems in your math book on chapter 11, lesson 1. The next problems are asking you to draw a line. So let's just say you need to draw a line for 2 1/4. Well, we just put our ruler and we make a little mark at the 0 spot. And then I would go down to 1 inch. So we're doing 2 1/4 inch. That's what we want to do. So we're going to go 1 inch, 2 inches, then add just 1/4 more. So we just go over to the first 4th mark and make a little line there and trace along there to connect the 2 lines. And this will now be 2 1/4 inch long. Let's say I want to do 1 1/2 inches, or let's do different, 3/4, 1 3/4 inches. We haven't seen that one come up very much. So again, I'm going to make a little mark at the 0. I'm going to go to 1 inch, because that's what it says right there. And then beyond the 1 inch, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 of the 1/4 inches, and then I'm going to just connect the line. And that is 1 3/4 inch. I should label that when I'm done. Lastly, we'll do 2 1/2 inches. 2 1/2 inch. So I'm going to put at the 0 mark, I'm going to go 1 inch, 2 inch, and then I know 1/2 is 2/4. Or I could just find the mark that's halfway in between this and the next inch. So 1/2, which is the same as 1/2, and then I connect those lines together. This will be 2 1/2 inch. Do the remainder of the problems your teacher requests you to do, and if you have any questions, refer to your teacher.